I am so happy today. We have a special visiting dojo master, John Hedtke. Now, I've known John off and on throughout the years, but I had no idea how amazing he was at the collaborative arts, as well as his accomplishments. I will have to wait till the end to find out why he can now no longer has fingerprints and can commit the perfect crime. But he's authored 26 books, 200 articles, 8 million words published. He's a fellow of the STC. He writes slogans. He plays the banjo. I mean, he's an amazing guy. And when I was looking for someone to talk about collaborative writing and distributive teams, his name came up over and over again from everybody who's talking. John, welcome to the dojo, and let me make you the presenter.
Okay.
Thanks for coming.
And actually, the reason that I can now commit the perfect crime because I no longer have any fingerprints is because I've written 8 million words, and I've just pounded the little puppies off. There we go. Now, all right, bingo. All right, for your quick edification, read fast. We've got a ton of material and half an hour or slightly less to go through it. So this is me and some of the fascinating stuff I do. You can look me up on my website, hedtke.com, and get a quick idea. And I have 2 blogs which are not listed there. One I will mention, it's my professional blog, and I have a personal blog which you can Google for called Don't Ask Me, I'm Making This Up As I Go Along, which describes everything about my life you need to know. Okay, what this presentation covers: why you should collaborate, why you should not collaborate, how to collaborate successfully, some tools and resources, and a summary. Why you should collaborate. You know, it's like your hormones are going to be pumping, your fingers are itching, and ideas for working with people are leaping about in your head. So why on earth would you want to collaborate on a writing project, any writing project, sharing the credit, the glory, and most of all sharing the money with somebody else? And so I'm going to tell you about the hows and whys of collaborating with a writing partner, or possibly even several writing partners, and living to tell about it afterwards. So there are a number of good reasons, all of which may be relevant. One is you need an entry point into the industry. You might have already had a distinguished career writing technical manuals and documents in one venue, but you don't have a lot of credentials in the other, and you want to dip your toe in the water to find out. For example, you may be very good at writing about manufacturing stuff, but you'd really like to try your hand at writing about pharmaceuticals. And while there is a certain amount of vocabulary that you need to pick up, and a few sort of rhythmic things, it's not too different when you get right down to it. Good writing is good writing for the most part all the way around, but you're going to need somebody to collaborate with to make sure that you know the ropes. You don't have the expertise. Your skill may be good, but your resume itself may be short. You may not be able to sell yourself. When I started out in this silly business, I was actually a programmer, and I got a break from a wonderful, wonderful person who figured that as a programmer and the very rough stuff that I did, I was as a developer looked like I could be turned into a decent tech writer, and in fact I did. I could. It worked out, but I didn't have the expertise to show at the time. So collaborating with somebody would have been a good way to do this. Third, excuse me, we've all, I think, been flirting with cold lately. You might collaborate because you're going to learn something watching your teammates. You may be actually fairly good at one brand of writing, but let's say, well, you're great at manuals, you don't have the online help experience you'd like. Collaborating with somebody on a project who has that experience will do you wonders. You can watch somebody right up close and see how they do things. You might collaborate because you don't have the time. If you've got a bunch of things on your plate, but not enough hours in the day to do this, you won't necessarily have the time, but you may be able to farm things out to somebody else that will allow you to do everything, and then some of the tasks, say indexing, to use a minor example, some of the tasks you might be able to farm out to somebody else and have them do. And closely related is you don't have the energy. You might be able to do all of this yourself, but there's just not enough interest, enough energy, or again, enough time. But the most important reason is that you collaborate because the boss says, okay, John, you're going to work with Phil and Betty on this, and you're going to turn out a brilliant suite of documentation for the blah 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 project. And us, knowing our cues, say, yes, sir. And that's it. That's a lot of the reasons you'd collaborate. There are plenty of others, but the bottom line is you're going to end up working with somebody. Now, working with somebody has many advantages, as you can see, but before you rush right out to team up with somebody, there's one rule that you should be aware of. Never collaborate on something you could write just as well yourself. And this doesn't mean that that given time you couldn't write all of this yourself, given energy, given, that it could mean you've got the expertise. It could mean everything, but if any of the previous are true, you don't have the time, you don't have the energy, you don't have the expertise. All of this is good, but if you have the time, you have the expertise, you could just as well do it yourself. There's nothing else on the horizon. Do it yourself. Don't split something up just because you think, oh, I should split this up. Never. This is the keenest way to get into trouble, and trouble is mostly a matter of boundaries, as I'm about to talk. All right, collaborating successfully. So, as I've said, for whatever reason, you're going to collaborate on a project, and so here's how you can collaborate successfully. First, you must plan what you're doing. Oh God, you've heard this before 1,000 times in 1,000 menus. Everybody says go build an outline, and for some people, doing an outline is only marginally better than shoving hot tar up your nose. But in fact, you must build a good documentation plan that shows what you're going to do. Your documentation plan needs to show scope and purpose. It needs to show the description of the project, the list of the deliverables, the schedule, and it has to have a very detailed outline. And the reason that you want a detailed outline and all the rest of this is that the outline is going to be what you use to divvy up the work. You can, I've got a link here. You can copy it down now. It'll be showing up on the resources again. There is a doc plan template and information also on my website, which is at, on my blog rather, which is tradebookauthor.com. I'll say that again, tradebookauthor.com. If you look for documentation plans or book proposals on the side of it, the navigation is currently being revised. It's not very good. You will find a whole bunch of stuff on how to write effective documentation plans, including this downloadable template here. When you have your outline, you must assign the work. You want to attach somebody's name to every single task. It can be, this part of the manual will be done, or this manual in this suite of manuals, or the online help, or something. But every single task needs to be identified and have a name tag to it. And I've got several samples in sample tasks in here. Content sections certainly. Who's going to review? Who's going to index? Who's going to create the online help? Who's going to be responsible for the release process? And a zillion other tasks that we could break out of what we were doing. the tasks don't have to be sequential. That is, somebody could write all of these sections, the first half dozen chapters of a beginning user's manual, then the next two are handed off to somebody else, and then back to the first person, and so forth and so on. It's whatever makes sense. Some people will have expertise in one area or a preference in one area, others won't. As a couple of examples, I'm very good at writing APIs. It's no big deal to me, and I'm sure this is because of my background as a developer, many decades ago. And it's just fine with me. Other people I've encountered loathe writing APIs, that they don't have the technical background, and for some reason it just chaps them beyond all reasonable measures, so they will go way out of their ways to avoid writing APIs. When I was working on my first freelance contract at Microsoft, slightly before Microsoft went public, that'll give you an idea of how long ago it was, back in the days when men were men and women were women and cars were cars and 640K in your computer was enough for anybody, I was working on the documentation for Microsoft Multiplan 3.0. That was their original spreadsheet, a DOS-based spreadsheet. Microsoft Excel 1.0 was being developed at that point, the first Windows-based spreadsheet. And somebody who I'd actually gotten a job there, a chap named Rick Grimm, an exceptional writer, he had come from, I'd worked with him before. His background was accounting, and he was a very, very good writer and software guy. So he and I ended up swapping off documentation sections. I did not have the wherewithal to write about some of the accounting functions available in Microsoft Multiplan, net present value, rate of return, things like that, whereas this was old hat to him, so he just dashed that off. I, on the other hand, was able to write some of his functions on the more technical stuff that he himself didn't do. So you could have swap-offs like that. It would work out. But regardless, you need to make sure every task is covered. One of the single biggest causes of disaster on a collaborative project is getting to right near the end and somebody says, well, I thought you were doing that. No, I thought you were doing that. Oh my God, we have 3 days till deadline. And so you want to avoid that because it is painful. All right, having planned and assigned the work, do the work. Get writing. Everybody goes off, blazes away, bashes the keyboard, and does their stuff. You want regular meetings within your collaboration team to report your progress to each other. This is going to be separate from any other meeting that you have about the project. This is just for us chickens kind of a thing. You want to be able to be honest with other people. I'm having trouble with this, or I'm really blazing away on that. Or you and I are both going to be hosed if we don't get more information out of this particular developer who's being difficult, whatever it is. But you want to be able to know what's going on with your teammates, even if you're not the one writing the stuff. Keep copies of everything, and when I say everything, I mean everything. Every email, every memo, notes of your meetings, and so forth. And this is not so much CYA, although there is certainly going to be a measure of CYA. But trust me, you will go a long, long way to avoid throwing your teammates under the bus. But you want to be very, very clear. If 3 weeks hence somebody says, no, I said in thus and such a meeting X, and you want to be able to go back and find that and realize where it is that you either missed that or that this was indeed a decision you both took and that you agreed to it and you forgot about it. Or possibly you go back to the notes and you say, no, I'm sorry, Phil, but in fact what we agreed was not X but Y, and then go from there. That's kind of the basics. You get done, life is good, you all look like heroes. Unfortunately, I don't think you're here to listen so much to how things work when they're going smoothly, but how to avoid the problems that come along with collaborating. And let me tell you, collaborating is an incredibly difficult thing at times. In fact, you may be amused to know some of the speaking notes that I have are coming from an article I wrote about 15 years ago entitled "Co-authoring Without Homicide." And this is kind of the way it is. I have had some relationships just go south while in the middle of co-authoring books, and co-authoring manual sets and articles and everything else is no different. So the first thing that you need to do when collaborating is mind your boundaries. Boundary violations are the single biggest problem in collaborating. And by boundary violations, I mean you've been assigned chapters 1 through 6 of something, and you get done with that, or you're really interested for whatever reason in the stuff in chapter 7, which Betty is writing. Well, if Betty's name is on it, keep your damn hands off of it. Do not touch this. That's Betty's section. Maybe you could write it better. Maybe you want to write it. Maybe you've got time free and you're going and you care to get ahead and do her a favor. It could be for the best possible motivation. But if you suddenly just tromp all over her boundaries, she's not going to appreciate it. People get really upset when you do that. So the key phrase here is don't get frisky. Now, if you think you can do something better, if you're free, if you'd like to do something, you know, discuss this, loft it at your meeting. And I would suggest, as the project gets hot and heavy, that you have daily check-ins of one kind or another. But if you think you can do something better, raise your hand. Say, I could write this chapter, and it would be great. But don't cowboy things up, because that will cause friction. And don't be surprised if someone else gets frisky for the same reasons. Regardless, work it out. And to do that, you will need to identify a decision-making process up front. Figure out who is going to be making the final decisions. If you're working in a standard TechPubs shop, somebody will be project lead, somebody will be the TechPubs manager, somebody is going to be anointed with the right to make the final decisions, even if it's only, you know, just the two of you doing something. But somebody gets to be top straw boss, and they're the ones who get to say, no, it's going to be like this, it's going to be like that. Resolve as many of your issues up front as possible. If you think that you want to do something and you're not going to be allowed to get to do it because you don't have time or because the other person does it better, even though you yourself may like writing APIs, suck it up. This is how you deal with successful collaboration. When I say give everyone the benefit of the doubt, as you've all doubtless experienced, as we get close to the end of a project in the last few weeks or months, everybody tends to get terse. Everybody tends to get really wrapped up in what they're doing. The creative glow is on, and they don't want to say a lot because it'll shake them out of it, and they won't think to tell you important information. So don't assume that they're hiding stuff to make you look bad. Don't assume that they're trying to sabotage you. Assume they just screwed up and forgot to tell you. And wherever possible, play nice. When you do have changes, let's say you talked to Betty and said, I've got time free. I can write chapter 7 for you. Particularly if you could take over, you know, doing the screenshots for chapters 4 through 6. And Betty says, sure. Announce this as far and wide within the group as you possibly can. Ways that I have used are using a project whiteboard that is visible to everybody. That's assuming that you're all in the same location. Group emails. Having a wiki is a really good idea, but again, you may end up with so much stuff to read that it's impossible to absorb. I personally tend to go for a whiteboard when that's practical. Be excruciatingly clear. As I say, as we get close to the end of a project, we're not going to communicate well. We're going to be busy writing. We're not going to be busy talking. And we just aren't going to have the bandwidth. So do everything you can to push yourself. And as I think I've kind of made clear, don't be afraid to swap assignments, but make sure it's okay with everyone first. Don't just romp off and do it. Oops, sorry. Turn the wrong page there. All right, tools and resources. When you are collaborating, even if you're in the same bullpen, you're going to need a chat client. Skype happens to be my favorite, but there are dozens of others. It is very likely that if you're working at a company, they will have a designated chat client that everybody uses. You know, which one doesn't really matter as long as you can do chats and you can do private chatting and you can log the messages. That's fine. You need reliable email. And I say reliable just because I have seen a few email systems that were not so good, shall we say. You need safe file sharing. I tend to go frequently towards FTP, and I'll just upload stuff into an area of my own website using an FTP client, and then people can download it. Or you could use versioning software, Perforce or other things will let you do versioning, and it's checked in somewhere, which has the advantage of providing versioning. When I say don't use Google File Share or Dropbox, why not? Well, they work wonderfully. They're excellent tools and so forth, but what you are not aware of is that Google File Share, like Google Email, has a writer in their terms of service that says anything you upload here is ours to do with as we wish. And that could very well violate all kinds of confidentiality agreements that the company has, whether they realize it or not. It might possibly not be a problem, but you don't want to poke that particular bear. Similarly, Dropbox, very good product. I recommend it for personal use for a lot of things. Their terms of service may allow them to look at stuff without your permission. And as security goes, it's not as good as it could be. So look into what is available for file sharing. It is very possible you can set up a reasonably secure, possibly even VPN level file share system where you are, and check with your IT group. Use the same software throughout. Everybody obviously should be using the same version of Word, the same version of FrameMaker, the same version of Outlook, whatever it is, so that you don't have compatibility problems. Resources. I mentioned tradebookauthor.com. You can download the template on the documentation plan. You can find out a lot about documentation planning. I've got an entire seminar that I've transcribed into a bunch of blog posts. And tradebookauthor.com is, FYI, a blog that is temporarily inactive, but is entitled, Hey Kids, Become an Author at Home in Your Spare Time and Earn Big Bucks. And it's all about how you can be an author of nonfiction books if you are so inclined. It's a weird gig, but it is a lot of fun. Directly, that has not paid off well for me directly in terms of money. Indirectly, I've made hundreds of thousands of dollars doing it because of the added visibility and reputation. I would also recommend a book entitled Managing Virtual Teams, and I am looking for it on my shelf right now. It is written by Kit Brown, Brenda Hutner, and Shar James Tanny some years ago, and it is, give me a sec, there we go, Managing Virtual Teams, Getting the Most from Wikis, Blogs, and Other Collaborative Tools. And it is published by Wordware, and it is how to do things when you have a team that is remote, and that will give you a lot more information. And we're about done, so here are the takeaways. 1, plan what you're going to do. McGee's law is it doesn't matter how you get there if you don't know where you're going, and that probably goes double for collaboration. Don't get frisky. People will smack you for it. Keep in touch with each other as much as is possible. And finally, play nice. And that's all I had to say directly. time for questions.
Wow. Excellent.
Thank you.
That was fantastic, John. Even better than I could ever have hoped for.
So I bask, I glow.
As you should. That was fantastic. My favorite really was suck it up. So many things can be reduced to that, actually. All right, folks. While we thank John and you're typing in your questions, let me tell you what's coming up. So type those questions in. I know I've got a couple still on my desk. Things ready to come in. So next TC Dojo session, that's this April. It's supposed to be May. May 13th, we're going to talk about HTML5. It's just basics on how the technologies fit together, HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript. We're not going to make you an expert in 30 minutes, by no means, but at least you'll see how they all fit together and get a little bit of information that might help you later on down the road. So register at the link, and don't forget to vote on upcoming session topics, because if you enjoyed this one with John, pick another session that you want to hear about, and I'll go find another speaker to talk about it. That's how we all learn and find out new stuff. It's amazing. Our next TC Dojo Arbortext edition is the end of this month. We're going to talk about having one style sheet that supports 2 different doc types. This is about modular style sheets in Arbortext. That's going to be fun. A little hard to visualize, but definitely fun, and so much more convenient if you've got more than one doc type and you don't want multiple style sheets. Our master series is April 21st. This is different. It's not so much an organized presentation. It's more a conversation among peers, and any subject is fair game. The folks come and they talk about their issues, and we all get information from each other, because that's how we all learn. All right, so do we have questions? Yes, we do. Don't forget to vote for your upcoming session topics. John, here's our question. What about working under a contract with a publisher and falling off deadline with them?
Well, they will officially beat the crap out of you for that, and I know this from deep and personal experience. A friend of mine, Wes Beckwith, who runs Wordware Publishing, the people that did the virtual teams and one of my books and things like that, says that if he wants to get 30 books out, he has to sign 60. And the reason is that books will run, about half of them will run between 1 and 6 months late. 6 months late, oh my God, you know, in the computer book field, who would have believed it? But in fact, that's par for the course. And this is my experience on my own. This is everybody else's experience too. You need to keep your editor heavily informed of what's going on and why things are running late and what you're going to do to fix this. And you know, groveling would be involved.
All right. One of the other things I thought was really big for you, John, actually, was the whole double benefit of outline. Right? It's not just a good idea to have an outline, and this is one of the things people struggle, especially when they go to DITA, because there's no, like, do I make the topics? Do I make an outline? How does the doc plan work when I've got multiple topics being handled by multiple people? But it sounds like it's not just important to have it for structure, but to divvy up that work.
Your outline, as people will be able to see when they download that sample, your outline should go down to, if possible, the 4th or 5th level. I mean, that detailed, because that's it's the little tiny stuff frequently. One, where you can find out where some of the problems are going to be, and secondly, if you're able to make an estimate, and I can, if you wish, sometime in the future, I can do a whole session on how to do this. You can, if you can estimate at the 4 or 5 level, saying it'll take me 4 hours, let's say, to write this particular half page, and so forth. If you break it down into tiny, granular bits, your margin for error in your estimate is much, much smaller than if you said, oh yeah, I can write that chapter in 3 weeks. But if you look at a piece and you say, That'd take me 2 hours and 15 minutes to write based on past experience. And I think that my margin for error is 5% on that. Chances are it probably is. And if you've broken everything down to that level, then getting a fairly tight estimate is simply a matter of addition rather than waving your hands in the air.
And if you've got that low a margin for error, you're pretty good, actually.
Oh, you'll beat everybody else's estimate. You can, when you're doing freelance work, this being able to give an estimate that you're comfortable with, where you won't lose money but still is incredibly tight, is usually the difference between getting the contract and hearing about it.
Awesome. And I know that's a topic that's had a lot of votes on the survey also. Outlines, how do you create them, how do you have a doc plan in a world where things are broken up into pieces. So I think we're going to take you up on doing another Dojo session soon. Exactly. Delighted. On that. There's one more question about the link for the HTML5 Dojo session. Yeah, we just locked that down actually over the weekend. The URL will go up on tcdojo.org very shortly. So don't worry about it. It'll get there soon. I'm just a little behind this morning. All right. Any more questions before we let John go and let the rest of you return to your life? Dojo sessions are short, sweet, to the point, which all writing should be also, or at least certainly to the point. And John, you did a fantastic job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, folks. I see no more questions. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.